Hello.
Hey.
And hello, friends. Welcome to the Field Guide to Healing podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to self discovery, personal growth, and the power of transformative conversation. So, we are your hosts. I'm Roni.
And I'm Jen.
And each week we will embark on a soulful exploration into the paths of healing.
Join us as we share profound insights from our experiences, the community, touching reflections, and practical tools to guide you on your healing journey.
Whatever it might be that you're seeking, whether it's clarity, connection, or that spark of reflection, you have found your sanctuary here. So, let's dive in.
Today, we're going to be talking about vulnerability in this episode, Field Guide to Vulnerability. So, last episode, we got down to the end of it talking about authenticity, and we realized, wait, we are missing a huge component of what it means to be authentic and how to put it into practice, which is how do we be vulnerable?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, and like, if all of you are like, oh gosh, this is a heavy question, like, it's all right. I think we can kind of help you here. We can define this a little bit. Jen, do you have anything that comes to your mind when you think of vulnerability?
Absolutely. So the wheels were spinning all week after our conversation last time. So I've been taking a lot of notes. And when I was thinking about vulnerability, I was really thinking about like, it's a confrontation
Mm,
and it feels really scary. And a lot of times we turn away from that confrontation.
yeah.
So I think vulnerability for me, I was trying to define its essence for how I experience it. So what I came up with is vulnerability is being able to confront the fear, to listen to what our thoughts, feelings, or behaviors are telling us. And by like being able to face that confrontation, we can learn so much. Like, what are my patterns? What do my patterns represent in my life? How do they show up in my relationships, in my day to day experiences? So we can learn so much from it. Um, but again, it can be scary, right? So hopefully with
Yeah.
today, we're going to be able to really break down the different components to make it digestible, make it approachable. Um, yes, that's my hope. So what about you? Did you have anything that was sparking your mind this week with vulnerability?
Yeah. So, similarly to you, I found myself excited about this conversation and also like for myself, I want to acknowledge that this is something that I also am working on, and I think we can all be working on how to show up with our vulnerability, how to show up and lean in to vulnerability, and again, like, holding space for with safe individuals, with safe people in your life. Like, this is by no means an invitation or an encouragement to put yourself in vulnerable situations with unsafe individuals, because there is a reason why you might feel hesitant in some places. And again, I think that circles back to Jen's definition a little bit of how to learn about what it means when it's showing up and like what it's telling us about our external and internal worlds. So yeah. Do you have
Yeah,
something coming to
definitely.
mind?
Well, before I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I also like I think like you're also highlighting where intention was coming up for us last week as well. So we're going to be talking about like how we can be intentional with our vulnerability and how that can, rather than a lot of times when we talk about like intentions, we talk about boundaries, and we're not closing doors. We're actually making the doors feel safe to walk past. We are aware. So like this is getting very metaphorical very quickly. But like if you imagine a hallway and we have all the things that we're afraid of in an interaction or in an experience, we can just say like, okay, I know these things exist, but my intention is at the end of this hallway and I'm allowing myself to continue to walk through it. So I think that metaphor acknowledges the difficulty in vulnerability, but also the trust that we have in ourselves to try to connect, because we don't want to deny ourselves of connection. We want to enhance our lives, our experiences. We are such social beings, and I think like the end of that hallway is like where we're all trying to go when it comes to being able to show up as ourselves and feel comfortable. um, so yeah, I think we're ready to start unfolding what
Yes.
vulnerability is and how to get there.
Yeah. So, vulnerability. So, like when I think of vulnerable, I also think of fragile or
Mm.
delicate or something with we treat gently. Um, and so I kind of want to begin navigating this conversation leading into the idea of connection and protection before we can really lean into like I think we need both parts of this in order to like really fully
Yes.
see vulnerability. So like when you think of something vulnerable, so I want you to imagine like for those of us like say you see like a little like bird and it's injured, how might we handle such a creature or a little being when they're in such a vulnerable state? I imagine like we'll probably kind of shelter them, like we'll maybe not touch them with our bare hands. We might even have like a protective layer to like protect both of us a little bit as we move in here. Um, but like we aren't shielding it from the world. Like we're not taking this thing and like holding it very tightly. We are allowing it space to like still be seeing and like
Mm.
externally aware. And like let's move out of that example and lean into what do we do as people when we might feel vulnerable like ourselves. So um one thing that comes to my mind is we might be overly protective of ourselves because we are vulnerable and we've got like a lot of soft spots and like we haven't been handled with really soft gloves before, so we don't know what it's like. Or maybe we do or maybe we don't, but like sometimes we go into an overprotective place which then can become very lonely. And the reason why is when we become really protected, really boundaried, we almost go in the opposite direction, really polarized. And what that can do is disconnect us from like community and connection, which it's like if we're in one extreme or the other, like these both have different implications. And I'm going to like pause there and like invite you to uh pop off with whatever might be coming up for you right now.
Yeah. Okay. The baby bird example. At first, I was like, okay, I'm not as fragile as a little hurt, broken baby bird. But then I was like, wait a second. I kind of am. And also, um,
Sorry to anyone of whom I might have made feel a
it
certain
was,
way.
well, that's the whole thing, though. Like, we think in those moments, we get so afraid. And, like, honestly, like, we're treating ourselves like we are so broken. Like, we're totally neglecting the fact that we are these full people who have experiences that have made us so strong. Even if, like, we didn't want to go through them, even if we don't want to be strong through it, we have this resilience behind us. Like, we can handle it. So, on baby bird topic with resilience, mama birds toss their little chicks out of the nest. And they're like, fly, bitch, go. You
Yeah,
know what I
get her
mean?
done. Like,
Yeah. So, like, you can choose to shut yourself away from the world. And sometimes, like, we need that respite. Others, it's like forcing ourselves to, I want to say forcing ourselves to be brave. Because it feels like a lot like pull up your bootstraps,
I
like
think
that
this
whole
this
thing.
circles back to the trusting your community,
Yes.
trusting the people with whom you have made these connections with to show up with that vulnerability and communicate what might be coming up. And again, like I'm talking about this in like a relational way because
Yeah.
like a lot of I think that relationships can really trigger some of these wounds for us or these automatic ways of responding. So like, ooh, this happened, so I'm gonna turn away and like really like go the opposite direction. But like what might happen if we turn towards that thing that's stirring up that vulnerability or that fear in us? Because
Absolutely.
like vulnerability, you and I, we kind of mentioned this when we were talking before this little meeting. And we were talking about how it's like that protective nature starts to come up, because when we're feeling vulnerable, it's almost like that survival thing steps
It
up. So
is. Yeah.
yeah. So I was gonna say before, and I'm gonna let you jump in like after I just say this little thing, which is when our survival mechanisms are initiated, they're like primal, and they can be performed unconsciously very quickly like a computer. So like let's hold so much juicy, comfy, cozy space for ourselves when we notice those automatic things happening, because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm gonna let you.
Mm. I was following right along with you. Vulnerability, when we think about what that actually means, if we're out in the wild, like National Geographic, they say the vulnerable creature gets injured out in the night. It needs to hide away from the animals, the predators that can kill it, right? Um, with our frontal lobes, we have vulnerability as an emotion, and our emotions help us stay safe. And when our nervous system registers vulnerability, it's the same exact feeling as my body. I am physically threatened right now.
Yeah.
So we feel the intense need to protect ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't want to
Mm.
be weak. We don't want to be vulnerable. So we close that door in our mind. So we don't see ourselves as that way. Or we hide from the experience. We deny connection with others. We, yeah, hide from the experience. Like we don't allow ourselves to fully live the lives that we see for ourselves because it could be scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I want to hold space for the parts of you that are showing up that are really afraid and really want you to continue to stay the same and want you to
Mm-hmm.
continue responding to situations in the ways that have felt comfortable and safe previously. Um, and when we think about vulnerability, it is what allows connection deepening at times. The ability for two people to show up in a space, and or even more, two or more people, whomever you want to, do that, to like show up and like
Mm-hmm.
hold support and like
Well,
safety.
you're trusting when you're vulnerable with someone. That means that you're trusting that person with you feeling unsafe and pushing through that. And when they're able to show up vulnerable themselves and trust you with themselves feeling unsafe, you are creating a whole new internal narrative of it is safe to connect, it is safe to share, it is safe to experience my feelings.
Yes. And separately from that, I want to like pull in this visualization of when we think that, sometimes we think it's like, oh wow, okay, I did the thing. I'm healed. It's good. We're great. I am iconic. Like maybe we don't feel that way. We're like, oh my god, that was terrible. Oh, that's so scary. But like think about your brain being like, you have all these little networks and all these like little streams and rivers and things a flowing, and the streams that are the strongest are the ones that we have used a lot more, meaning like more water is collectively going down this more frequently. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like really, really big. So when we think of how many actions does it take in the opposite stream, this little dam we're creating, to slow the pull of energy that automatically is flowing down this place, and we want to divert it. So when we think about it and we're able to visualize the fact that it's like many times us diverting that stream of water, that stream of conscious, to a new direction, we are actively carving that path to use more easily, because we're pulling the water away from that ancient chamber that we're like, oh, this is just not working anymore. This doesn't feel right. Like, this isn't the way I want to automatically respond, like all the
Mm-hmm.
time. Like we want to reduce the frequency of that channel. We don't want to get rid of the channel, because there's times where that channel very well was appropriate, as but we might want to move away from using that as like a primary channel.
Absolutely. The way that I'm imagining this too is like, wow, that's so beautiful. I'm sorry, I'm imagining a beaver. um,
Yeah, literally like a dam, like a little beaver guy like doing his shit.
yeah, and it's so cool. Like every time, it's like a reward. Every time that you allow yourself to like successfully face the feeling that you're having. So not even like having the whole connection happening, but like allowing yourself to sit with that vulnerability, that feeling of being vulnerable for like a second. You get like a little twig, a little stick, and you get to go put it over on the side of like,
Yep.
oh, I felt safe. This is great.
Yes, literally. Like, so imagine like we are building our little dam to help this stream of life. Like, think of like life being that stream flow coming through our brains. It's like, okay, that little, like, however big, maybe some days it's a big twig. Maybe you're like, damn, I got a whole branch. Like, how did that work?
Yeah.
Some days it might literally just be like a little guy. And like
Mm-hmm.
that little guy is still shifting the narrative that Jen was talking about, like rewriting. And like when
Oh yeah.
we're in connection with community and people with whom we can co rewrite that narrative, I think that just is really beautiful because it's not just, oh, I'm healing as one. It's like, no, we're healing in community. Like we
And that's
are.
so powerful because we have witnesses to our healing. And not just people seeing it, but people experiencing that joy with us. So I just imagine like your community, like when you get to be vulnerable and they receive that for you and it feels safe, you have this new experience, even if they're unaware of it, just like that joy of the interaction, it's like they're gifting you with like twigs and leaves to help build that dam.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so cute.
I love
That's so
that. It's
nice.
so cute. And now you just got to like witness Jen and I co-creating. um yeah, so I think it's so important as we're talking about vulnerability, we're talking about connection, we're talking about protection, like, and this intention, like these things can all coexist. Like all of these things can coexist. There's a time where like we might disconnect or discontinue certain behaviors because like there might just be behaviors that we are participating in that we're not wanting to have anymore. So like I want to hold space and respect like the duality of like these things existing, like whether it be like I don't want to do this at all versus like this isn't completely a maladaptive thing. Like there's so
Yeah.
much room to like exist and view things.
Right, that's where intention is coming up for us too. Because when we were talking
Yeah.
about this, like intention was like in orbit, and talking about it more, you're again trying to define like the essence of what intention is within the scope of vulnerability, authenticity in our relationships. Um, so what I had come up with was intention is the driving force behind an experience, and
Mm.
through research, right, Ronnie found it's the mental state. And I mean, I can keep going, but Ronnie was saying something that like really clicked for me, like regarding like it being like an influencing factor. Do you want to pick up here?
Yes, 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 yes.
You're like, where was I? That was so great. I don't know.
So, yeah.
I can. So you were talking about it being an aligned action, and I love that because it's in
Yeah.
alliteration, so it's easy to like remember. But it also is like that's exactly what intention is to me. It's an aligned action, and it's very
Oh,
fluid.
yes. So Jen and I were, discussing this, and how I see intention is as it is a shifting thing. And like I kind of pulled from my experience as a yoga teacher, I oftentimes will invite my students at the start and then like throughout class to consider an intention that they may like to carry, or maybe something that they want both on and off their mat today that they want to like take through with their experiences. And it's flexible because we can have different environments, different situations we're in where our intentions might be different, and therefore the aligned action might also be different, because there's like we can't deny the multiple influencing factors as we show up in different spaces, the intersectionality of our experiences and how that might shape our experience. And like, there's so many things happening concurrently, but
Yeah.
the aligned action is when we begin to, here's my intention, I'm aligning how I'm showing up in this space with these action items. And the words that came to mind as Jen and I were talking were that of intention, reflection, perspective, and curiosity. And I think that, and again, we're giving you a lot of words that are in series of 4. And I'm finding that it just feels pretty good. It feels aligned. But when I think of these things, and Jen, feel free to hop in at like any point here if there's something that feels like, important to put in here, is that these kind of are connected to each other. So when we have our intention, we might be like, I want to be like viewing this through XYZ lens. Maybe that's like my intention is to be curious, or my intention is to be open to alternative perspectives.
I do want to jump in really quickly.
Yeah.
We already set intentions all the time. We're just not aware of it.
Yeah.
So like what that means is like, I am so tired. I'm going to do the bare minimum at work today. That's an intention. So like when we're talking about this intentionality, when it comes to applying it in situations to help us be vulnerable and authentic, it's like having that awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also, and this brings me back to another important point of our intention is our touchstone. So as we move through our experiences and whatnot, we can circle back to this intention of like, oh, if I'm gonna be doing the least today, like I might like throughout the day be inventorying how much I'm doing, or I might be slacking off, or I might be taking more bathroom breaks, or whatever that looks like. But I see it almost like a touchstone, and like our values, like we've talked about, are these overarching things that are like continual. Our values aren't tied to a destination, whereas like intentions might be. Like our intention might just be for the duration of like the time that we're feeling that way. Does that make sense? Does that feel?
Yeah, like the middle of your workday, you can be like, wait, I actually feel very awake. The 6 cups of coffee I had really helps. So your touchstone could be, okay, I was feeling really tired. But again, like being able to come back to, I'm actually surprising myself with how much I'm accomplishing.
Yeah, I don't know why, but when I keep thinking of touchstone, I'm thinking of this like 90s cartoon with like dinosaurs.
Yeah, wait, wasn't that, I think that actually was like a production company?
No, I'm thinking about a
Oh.
specific show. They had like this magic like thing that would bring them to dinosaur land or something. I don't remember.
I love that show. Like, no, it wasn't Land Before Time, but it was, they had like, it was like it was like the
Yeah.
scale or the egg, the dragon
Yeah.
egg. That was such a good show. What was that?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Dragon Tales.
Oh, what an easy name. What an easy name.
Mm.
All right, sorry for that. That's what my brain is just imagining, this like dragon tails stone.
Oh, the touchstone, Dragon Tail stone. So it's like a shimmering. If you haven't seen it before, we can compare it to.
No, I'm just gonna show them. I'm just gonna show them. Here it is.
Wow.
This guy. Yeah. So.
That's your touchstone.
Yeah. I'm so glad you all know what we're talking about. Moving on. Moving on.
So we were talking about intention and wrapping that up with a
Yes.
bow, making it digestible. And then your number 2 was reflection in 2 senses of the word.
Yeah, so when I think of reflection, I think of like the ability to reflect on an experience, because we don't know, like, we've talked about this in the past, we don't always have to be doing it in the moment, and oftentimes it's difficult in the moment when we're already like overwhelmed sensory wise to sit here and reflect as it's happening. So like after the fact, reflecting, and also maybe noticing what's reflected back at us, what things might be being projected or mirrored during these experiences, heightening them. And then leaning into holding space for alternative perspectives and experiences, knowing that we all come with our own backgrounds and histories, and these things can kind of butt heads, or we might have different experiences or perspectives on how things are being, just kind of like holding up space for that. And then the curiosity is, again, can you cultivate a mindset of curiosity to yourself about what's going on, and also against those alternative experiences or perspectives, like holding space for your loved ones and your peers of like, are they the type of person who I can trust, and then I can show up and be authentic and real and vulnerable with them.
So it sounds like being able to press pause when we're feeling vulnerable and really assess like, okay, what's coming up for me here? Am I denying myself of an experience? Am I feeling fearful? what would it be like to allow myself to continue forward with this interaction?
Yeah, and like I think about like turning toward yourself as well. And like Jen and I were talking a little bit about this before, but I was talking about somatically how some of these things show up in our bodies. So like when we're feeling unsafe, you might notice like our shoulders curl towards to like kind of protect this heart space. Our we might even bend our backs a little bit. We start to kind of make ourselves smaller. So like I like imagine like what it is to like embody the opposite of that. So that might look like literally sitting up from my lower spine, opening up my chest, my shoulders, signaling to my body that we're safe. But noticing when some of that's coming up, our shoulders hiking up, our ears scrunching down, like these little things can be indicators physically of that response happening. Because not all of these things I think are going to be intellectual. They're also going to be like in our system, like in our body system.
Yeah.
Um,
The thoughts we're
yeah,
having, the feelings that we're experiencing. Feelings are also physiological, like Ronnie's talking about, and our behaviors too. So, like the closing off, it also could be turning away. Um, Behaviorally, I know that like our thoughts and our feelings can be, it's, there's a dance, I guess, around the cognitive behavioral therapy community. But I think a lot of times our behaviors, when they are reactive, like they are our defense mechanisms, that is our voice. It's our internal voice coming outward. Um, and that can be a behavior that you can cue into as well, like hearing your tone of voice and how you're speaking. Um, I see it a lot on Instagram, like the gentle parenting, the parents like saying, "Oh, okay," but like it's like so sharp, like how I just said it instead of "Oh, okay," when their child like throws their sippy cup for like the umpteenth time of the day.
yeah.
So just like cueing into yourself if you have that ability to be open in that moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd also like call in like when you notice any all or nothing type things happening, like when our responses are really leaning into like this black or white type of place, noticing when that's coming up. And that could be a place to notice, am I feeling vulnerable? Is this me being overprotective toward myself or like what's happening around me? Um, Noticing if we're isolating, like kind of all of these things we're talking about. And I want to like I hear the heaviness in both of our voices as we talk about this because I think it can be I think it is it's work. Like it's work to the intention. I think this is when intention comes back. It's like this thing where we can turn toward it. Um yeah, it just feels like it could be work. And I
Yeah.
don't think it needs to be this 100% consistency all of the time because we also learn when we show up in ways that aren't how we want or like when we see the impact of how our response is for ourselves or for others or X, Y, or Z. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, because when we experience this vulnerability, it's synonymous with saying, I'm ready to experience and listen to all of my emotions. Well,
yeah,
like no, I like that's something that like most people are not. When I say most people, because I've never met someone ever, but I'm not saying there's not anyone out there who is fully open to their full thoughts, feelings, and like behaviors constantly all the time, like taking in yourself, doing inventory 24/7. That's exhausting.
yeah,
So like this vulnerability, like it really is a choice, and that's why we're talking about it specifically when it comes to connecting with other people or connecting with like really close experiences in our lives, because like, is it worth it? Right? Is it something that you're willing to dedicate this time and space in your life for to create this growth in yourself so you can show up and have that connection that you deserve in those spaces?
yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I want to like hold space for like the joyful experiences that can be had from vulnerability, like just the absolute comfort and ease and
Mm.
simplicity almost in the the after, like once you've gotten through the communicating or the like tending to, like just like there's a moment of that like that
Yeah.
pause
No, wait,
almost.
that's where I experience my defense mechanism when it comes to vulnerability. Like I'll have like that we were talking about before, the beaver moment. I get on my little twigs from the people around me, and then I'm like, now what? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and let's talk about that. Like oftentimes like I think we think the most difficult part is like dealing with all of the things that we're already used to dealing with. So like our defense mechanisms and our loneliness and or like whatever is happening. Like no, you already know how to deal with that and live with that. Like we've been doing that. It's also the pleasant experiences that we're learning to build a tolerance for and a comfortability in because of the fact that they can also trigger our nervous system because of the newness and the
yeah.
unfamiliarity and the vulnerability and the fear.
Yeah. It's like you said last week, like we're stretching. We have to stretch in order to grow. So like we're comfortable with the negative or not
The
negative. We're comfortable
capacity.
our capacity for the uncomfortable experiences that we're having, where even though it's uncomfortable, we feel like it's like contained. But like when we elevate ourselves to the next level, we are like, we have no idea where we go. For me, I think what happens is that I shoot straight up. Like I just get so happy and all my energy flows and I'm like, where did it go? I think I lost it. I don't know where it's going. Is it going to reach out to the other people? What's happening? I don't know where to put any of this. Um
Yeah. There's no container. You don't know how to keep it contained.
yeah, you never experienced it before. So even though it's such a joyful, wonderful experience that you've been striving to be able to attain, to like fight through your fear of being vulnerable with others, to like have that moment of joy, it's like, what do I do now that I have it?
Yeah.
Which I think that's where intention can be super, super helpful. Um, I think intention can be like our field guide to having safe vulnerability.
Mm.
And what that means is like I said before, intention and boundaries kind of go hand in hand. That hallway I was talking about, we know where we're going because it's what we feel ready for and it's what
Mm.
we desire for ourselves. So being able to like have that awareness and set an intention before you enter an experience. So let's say like my intention for having that social connection is not just to allow myself to have social connection, but be in connection with the people around me. When my excitement, my joy flies out when I do feel finally connected, I can say continue being with. Just be with the people. That means like I can like look around, make eye contact, I can smile, I can tell them, oh my gosh, I'm so overjoyed. I have no idea what to do with how happy I am just being in this space with you all. Like, how nice would it feel to receive that compliment from someone?
Mhm. I also like from a like neurodivergent place, I feel like allowing yourself to like stim or like work through some of the like tactile and sensory like feelings that might come with like intense pleasurable experiences like that. Like I feel like I would understand that and like you know holding space for yourself to lean into that. Um and I'm like what's coming to mind is like we've talked about the window of tolerance, the whelm realm, as we've you know talked about, and I think that this is like almost in the overwhelm realm.
Yeah.
So like we can be like again like when if we've talked about the window of tolerance, for those of you who know what it is our capacity to like experience like our world and like triggers and different things. So like sometimes we have a small window, which means we have like this little space to work between. Sometimes we have a really big window. So like this is part of learning the capacity to feel these things and to like hold space for them, like dip our toe into them. Like layers of vulnerability. So like I think
Mm.
that like again like there's vulnerability like in a lot of these experiences like during before during after, and then this after when we're talking about maybe it feeling joyful, maybe it feeling good, maybe it feeling euphoric, whatever like experiential word you want to put in here. There's also I think a certain level of vulnerability when we are allowing ourselves to be seen, to be felt, to be heard, to be experienced
Yeah.
in that way. Because we might have this mask or this persona that we've developed that is digestible, appropriate, small, etc. Like different things. Again, protective measures, keeping ourselves small, keeping ourselves quiet, keeping ourselves out of the spotlight. These are all protective mechanisms. So allowing yourself to step into that spotlight, allowing yourself to be seen and like seen in a way where it's like we are taking that light
Mhm.
and we are shining it on the shadow self and on the self that we deem as presentable. Like we're like putting that spotlight on, even if for a moment we're showing a new little spot, it can be very vulnerable to sit with the experience that is being witnessed.
Yeah. Oh my god. Okay, so you're taking me somewhere really cool, really important,
I've
and
been
really
known. I've
I've
been
been
known to do
known.
that. Sorry.
Reciprocity.
Mm,
Reciprocity is the number one penultimate most important piece of our relationships and our connections. That's
mm,
how we measure our level of safety and connection too. Is like, okay, I'm being vulnerable. Is this person
yeah.
receiving the vulnerability? Are they being vulnerable as well? Um, I'm laughing with this person. Are they laughing with me? Why aren't they laughing?
Yeah.
Do they think I'm weird? Right. This is where like the downward spiral can start. I think I'm in love with this person. I really hope they love me back. I hope they love me too. That's reciprocity.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about being vulnerable in our relationships, being able to acknowledge that there's this reciprocal piece of I'm trusting myself with you because you trust yourself with me, it's kind of a beautiful thing. And I
I
have this.
will. Before you do that reading, I do want to circle back to I'm trusting you with me and imagine yourself as the little bird again. You are
Mm,
trusting yourself to be held with tender care by these individuals.
yeah.
That's
With the intentions that you've
so,
set entering this experience. Whew.
so vulnerable. Like,
But I think what I'm about to read is going to help shed some light on while it's vulnerable and while it's scary, it's also in our nature. We are, no matter what we
what book
do,
is this?
uh, this is Eastern Body, Western Mind,
Mm-hmm.
by Enodia Judith. I may have butchered that. Oh, excuse me.
What page?
We are on page 62. There's a
Okay.
blurb by Stanley Kellerman.
Okay, I see that.
Okay. Just as the groundedness of a tree roots the flow of sap from earth to leaves and from leaves to earth, so does our groundedness channel the flow of excitement from ourselves to the environment and from the environment to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
No
Mm.
matter no matter what we do, we are in a reciprocal relationship with the world around us, the people around us. We are constantly receiving, we are constantly giving.
Mm.
And I think
It's
when we're, yeah, go ahead.
no, you're good. You're good.
I was going to say that, like, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we're honoring our true nature as people. And just like the tree will be absorbing what's around it, even if I was just thinking about if there is like some toxins in the earth, right? You're still absorbing that. What does that mean for you when you're like giving output, right? It can be kind of fearful. Maybe that's why you're feeling closed off. But anyway, that reciprocal nature of existing in the world is part of our human nature. And I see vulnerability as a gift to help us experience that reciprocity and experience life's fullness.
Mm.
What's coming up
Yeah.
for you?
Well, I do love me some trees, and I think it's so important to remember that reciprocal relationship is happening, and like we are as human beings communal and like social creatures. So
Yeah.
there is this desire, this innate need for this connection, for this space in some way, shape, or form. So like there's that innate drive happening, and that constant give and take, like it was saying, like from the earth to the trees to the leaves to the leaves to the tree to the earth. It, I think, really shows that like there is this chain of experiencing happening in different layers of existing.
Yeah.
Like it's just like it's like so it's like so in us. It's not just like this, like it's like we're plugged in to something and it like influences how we experience and vice versa. And it's like what might happen if I plant myself somewhere where I'm in nourishing soil and I am
Ooh.
in this really beautiful reciprocal relationship where it's like all of these things are being recycled and renewed and rejuvenated and poured back in and like
Mm.
yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Mm.
So this, okay, I think I knew where I was going with the toxins before.
Okay.
So the reciprocal nature also requires balance. Otherwise, that's where it starts to feel yucky. Um, so the window of tolerance can really influence how balanced we're feeling, or like how we're feeling inside, can lend itself to how open our window is. So if we are taking in toxins, so if we're in environments that are uncomfortable, or if we're feeling depressed or anxious, if we hear really bad news, right, we're not going to be as able to be there for ourselves or be there for other people. So our reciprocal nature is going to be very small or super, super imbalanced. Um, so when you say like plant ourselves in different areas, like that's the gift of being vulnerable, to be able to like see yourself when you're feeling that conflict internally, like see, okay, woo, what's going on? I have to be able to look at it so that I can get myself through it. And then also being able to have that connection with others when you're feeling that internal conflict, that wall coming up. I can allow myself to be in a reciprocal nature here, because no matter what we're giving and receiving, I'm going to either receive the negative judgments I'm giving myself because I'm not giving myself the chance to connect, or I can receive who they truly are and what they mean to me. I'm choosing to be around this person. There must be a reason.
Mm. Yeah. And again, I think it comes back to that trust and like trusting yourself to be able to experience what's happening and then make a decision that's informed
Yeah.
from that. Like giving yourself the space to lean in and trust. Mm.
Mm. I feel like trust is going to be, that's where I'm still feeling incomplete with this topic.
Mm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm having roadblocks
Mm.
myself come up in my mind, but how are you feeling?
I think trust is, like I do think that there is more to this. And like what comes to mind is like trust building, like the idea of cultivating and building. And what does that kind of come through is like the repeated nature of showing up in that way. um so yeah, there's definitely
Mm.
something here that I'm curious about. Like there's almost this like when we think of reflective nature, again it makes me think of like looking into the mirror a little bit. um but I also think there's always such an important overarching theme of like acknowledging the ways that society does influence our experiences. Like there's an undeniable hand at play in that way. So there is like a lot of themes here that could be explored.
Oh my goodness.
um
Like the
we
levels of
have
trust from meta all the way down to micro.
yeah, yeah,
Oh my goodness. And that goes into like oppression and so many deep experiences that, oh my
yeah,
gosh, we really could like, hey, let's hand out some shovels. We have some digging to do.
yeah, yeah. So always holding space for the system, always holding space for the external influencing factors that really prime our systems to not trust or prime our systems to be more alarmed. This makes me think of anxiety. It makes me think of our sensory systems, our nervous system. Um, it also
Mm.
makes me think of intuition.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's been like brimming under the surface for me as well in this conversation. Or
Yeah.
intuition. I think trust and intuition, they truly go hand in hand. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that guiding light, that turning toward, I think that would be like the same place, at least for myself, where my intuition registers.
Mm.
That internal knowing, right?
Yeah. And like, how do we know what that is if we've been disconnected from it? How do we reconnect? What practices can we participate that help to promote or influence the trust with self or the intuition?
I don't know. I think we're going to
I
have
guess you guys are going to have to tune in to find out.
to talk about it next week.
And we are on episode 4 right now. So for those of you who are tuned in and turned on, we have a special announcement, which we're gonna end on this note, I think. So Jen and I are going to be having our first guest for episode 6. And for those of you who are listening, we will be talking about all things intuition. Mm-hmm. So tune in to Instagram, keep an eye on the socials. We will be posting some teasers and definitely letting y'all know who that is before the episode is launched. So very excited to have that conversation. And also let y'all in on some hopefully starting soon series. So as we bid you farewell, remember, self-awareness is your compass, guiding you back to your center, and understanding your own rhythms is the true strength to help you navigate your emotions and your reactions.
Join us next time as we dive deeper into the human experience. Until then, breathe, find balance, and know that you're not alone on this journey.
Love this episode? Share it with a friend who wants to ride the waves of awareness with us.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay mindful, stay present, and keep exploring the extraordinary world within. And until then, catch you on the trails.
Catch you on the trails.